Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Redemption Thursdays with Rabbi Pinchas Winston. I am Yehuda Shamroth. I live in Ramat Beit Shemesh. I run the Miriam Project Geula Hour, which is just a website and a Facebook page and occasional podcasts that we do to talk about the end of days. Have been going ongoing for several years now, but not as long as our esteemed guest, Rabbi Pinchas Winston, who was my initial inspiration for thinking about and learning about the time period of history we're in right now, which is, of course, the end of days. Rabbi Winston is, of course, a prolific writer and a Torah scholar and a speaker. He's got a beautiful website. Please look at his both websites. One is sharnunproductions.org. You can see it under his name. The other being 36.org. I can't decide which one I like the best, Rabbi. I keep going back and forth, but I think I do like the Shar Nun Productions. It's a little deeper and a little more explanation, and it's just beautiful. I love to share every week, and my kids say, you're going to talk about Rabbi Winston again, they say every week. And then when I don't, they say, what happened to Rabbi Winston? Where is he this week? Is he okay? So I've got them brainwashed, Rabbi. You should know. They do wait for you. And they do give it over to their friends, too. I know they do. Of other books, I just want to include other books. Some of my favorites are talking about the Eretz Israel, which is one of the first books that people can look to. It's still around, I think. Rabbi, can we still buy this book?
Yeah, one of my favorite books.
One of your favorites. I have one of the original copies. I think you'd be surprised to see the rickety copy that I have. I mean, it's got spiral bound on it, I think. Rabbi talks about the reasons, Torah reasons why we should be making Aliyah, and all about the holiness of the land that we live in and that we want to live in. There's a book on mindfulness and Torah and redemption. Big theme is redemption and Geula with the Rabbi. Geula Barachamim, talking about the end of days and so forth. And he was going to continue his series on strategy for the end of days, but we just had a little chat, and the Rabbi would like to instead discuss Torah and the importance of Torah, especially considering the Shavuot or Shavuos holidays coming up in a few days. So thank you again, Rabbi, for so much of your beautiful, amazing mind and Torah. We're so blessed to have you, and thank you for joining us.
Should do all that before I come on. It's hard to listen to. Anyhow, in any case, it's all one of the same thing. That the idea of Geula, even though the Gemara says that the Geula take place in Nisan, it took place in Nisan back at that time, and it will take place in Nisan in the future, God willing. And Nisan, has come and gone. It's now Rosh Chodesh Sivan, Chodesh Tov, Varch, and where is Mashiach? I mean, he's in the world. There's no question he's in the world. There's no question he's, somewhere at this point now. Doesn't know who he is. I don't know. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know till the last second. Even after he was told, he still rejected it. And his soul is the one that's going to be inside Mashiach ben David, we're told. That's the tradition. So, some things never change. It could be he still disagrees, still arguing with Hashem whether he should be Mashiach or not. I don't know. But still, here we are. Sivan. The good news is that the Leshem brings down, and he says that the truth is that the Geula only begins in Nisan, only begins on the 15th of Nisan, and it ends on Shavuos. That's when it's supposed to end. So we're still ahead of the game over here with a couple more days, and anything can happen. Things change very quickly. We've seen that several times, and it could, just because we can't see how within a couple of days everything could unfold and we could be at that point, that doesn't mean that it can't happen that way, because it's absolutely amazing how God turns things around very quickly. And the truth is, he built it into the process. It's been going on for some time, just that we can't always see where and how it's going on, but it's going on, and it may be hidden from us. And there's some point in time it starts to count. Just like God forbid, an illness. I mean, the opposite, where a person can feel perfectly fine one moment, and then the next moment start to feel like they're catching a cold. The truth is, the virus is in their body already for a week, and then it just starts to show up, and they start to feel it. So that's a negative example. I'm sure there's lots of positive examples too, and this is probably the best positive example: the fact that Mashiach can come at a moment's notice, and it's only a moment's notice to us. That's what we have to remember. It's the last second for us because we weren't paying attention. We didn't recognize the signs. But if you've been paying attention, then you can see how it's been developing and moving in that direction. And it will be a big shock and surprise for some people, but not for everybody. For those people who are looking for it, anticipating like they're supposed to. So Shavuos is that, and it makes perfect sense because the truth is that the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos in the sixth chapter says that anybody who learns Torah, who's involved in Torah, is going to be a free person. The only way to achieve true freedom is through Torah itself. And a play on the word, it says that the luchos were carved up by Hashem, and the writing was charus, was engraved by Hashem on the tablets themselves. And the Chazal say charus al tikrei charus elo cherus. It's the same. The nice thing about Hebrew English, the words, they change a little bit, the letters based upon the tense and the need. But in Hebrew, you can have the exact same letters for two different words. Just the vowels, because they're dots and lines, you can change that and change the whole meaning of a word and find a connection. So charus and cherus is spelled the same way. Charus means engraved, and cherus means freedom. So don't read that they were engraved on the tablets. Read that the freedom is on the tablets. The Ten Commandments, the entire Torah, Taryag Mitzvot. What a selling job! I mean, how many Jews have jumped ships saying the exact opposite at the Seder table in Haggadah? The Rasha, the evil son, we call him the evil son, but he's there. He's participating in the Seder, and he's somebody who does not believe it's cherus on the luchos. Someone who's osik b'Torah, and so many countless people throughout history today, especially, who have come from religious families and left it all behind because they don't believe that's where freedom is. Freedom seems to be out there somewhere. What they're doing, look at that person. They can do whatever they want. They can dress the way they want. They can act the way they want. They can pretty much do almost anything within reason because society has its own laws too, secular society. But compared to us, I mean, we have to dress with a dress code, and we have to keep Shabbat and Yom Tov, and it seems so confining. And the opposite. So what do Chazal say? What do they mean by that? The alter charus of the cherus, that freedom is on the tab. Is that really true? Is that just a nice play in the words, but not really a true concept? Well, I mean, obviously, I believe it's a true concept. That's why I'm sitting here right now, living by Torah the best I possibly can. Once upon a time, not everyone was doing that. I mean, if a person's chozir b'tshuva, bal tshuva, a lot of people, they changed their lifestyle. So they obviously bought into that because it's not like they were afraid where lightning came down from the sky. They said, I don't know if I believe yet, but that lightning really shook me up. So let me go find out and become religious. It wasn't that way at all. They came in believing a lot of times that God didn't care if he was there at all and what we do. And they only became religious, especially in the beginning, before they even got to the point where they could believe so strongly that Torah was from Mount Sinai, because it made sense. It talked to them. At some point in time, it talked to them. It's like a mashal, an analogy of two men, right? Three really. One, it's like two students and one teacher. Okay, and the teacher is standing at the front of the class and saying, "Let me tell you how to become a better person." And the one student, okay, please do, right? And the other student who thinks that life is just for having fun. He's a fun-loving individual. All he wants to do is be unrestricted, to do whatever he wants when he feels like doing it. That's his idea of life. There's billions of people out there who are having a blast, who are having tons of fun, who never have to do anything in terms of character development. So why should I have to? And he figures, no, I'll put up with this as long as I possibly have to, And I remember my own personal. I went to Cheder until grade 9. It was mandatory in the conservative system that I grew up in, reform conservative system I grew up in, that you had to go to, you went to Cheder 3 times a week, Sunday mornings, Monday afternoons after school, and Wednesday afternoons after school. And that was basically it. And, our holidays, you sat there for 4, 5, 6 hours, bored to tears, because you had no idea what was going on. You didn't believe what was going on, and you just couldn't wait to get home. And that was it. So in my mind, the first thing I wanted to do when I got of age, where I could finally do it, was get out of this thing, was leave it behind completely. I can still see myself, a grade 9 is about 15, 16 years of age. That goes back a long time ago, about 40 years. I can still see myself sitting in the chair by his desk, and he's trying to convince me. He's a conservative rabbi, but still he wants to keep people coming and keep people in the fold somewhat. Nice man. And he's like trying to convince me and others, we go one by one, to come back. And I'm thinking, I'm being very polite, of course, saying, well, I'll think about it, I'll see. But inside I'm going, no way, no how. Because I'll never need this the rest of my life. This is just constriction and restriction and kashrus and things like that. We kept kosher in the house. And, who needs it? And my friends, even more so down that road. Also, in Cheder, we used to learn Hebrew, right? We had a Israeli Hebrew speaking teacher teaching us Hebrew, and many of the students in the class paid attention, and they learned Hebrew. Not me, because I sat there at the back of the class with my friend, and we both said, we'll never need this the rest of our lives. And of course, this very day, I struggled with Hebrew. And I remember this because if I just paid attention back then, like so many people I know today who are also Chosur B'Tshuva, who speak beautiful Hebrew, fluent Hebrew. You know why? Because even though they didn't think they would need the Hebrew, they paid attention anyhow. You never know how things are going to unfold, what's going to happen. But back then, at that stage of my life, I thought to myself, there's no way this has any relevance whatsoever. And it's amazing how within 5, 6, 7 years, things can change. The world changes too. And because of that, all of a sudden, what seemed to be so not valuable becomes the most valuable thing in the world. So the students who this teacher is talking to, saying, let me teach you how to get more out of life by being more developed spiritually, he's yawning away. He can't wait to get out of that class and run the other direction. So he does. Class is over, right? The other students enjoyed it, paid attention, took notes, and he's out of there. He's going the opposite direction. And, but he notices over time that the other person doesn't need the same amount of things in life to make him happy. Most people don't notice these things. But let's say this mashal he does. He notices that this person, he seems to be shalem. He seems to be a certain inner peace that he doesn't have. If he wants to have it, he has to do something. He has to do extreme sports or extreme entertainment, but it's always dependent upon something else to make him happy, to make him feel complete. The most amazing statistic, negative statistic, is how many people are depressed in the Western world and are on antidepressants, despite the fact that our society has more materialism, more affordable materialism than ever before in the entire history of mankind, outside the Garden of Eden. There ain't really much materialism back there either, but it's like, how does it happen? How could that be? If we have it's like if you're hungry and you eat, you should be full. If you're eating food that you enjoy, you should be happily full. It's like eating and not being satisfied. You put the food in your mouth and somehow it's not making you feel anything in your stomach. It's like you haven't eaten, or you don't enjoy what you're eating, but you are. But how does it? That doesn't make sense unless, of course, what you're eating is not real. What you're consuming is not real. And it's artificial. And it's not completely artificial because even in Judaism, we acknowledge the power of a glass of wine to lift a person's spirits. We give it to Avil. People are in mourning to lift their spirits, to make them have more of a sense of das, more sense of yeshiva das. And Kiddush and the Seder, we understand the power of it. But we're so against addiction. We're so against people having to rely upon these things specifically to go into a state of shleimus. It's got to come from within. If you want to use some tools from the outside, sometimes they help with that, 100%. As we do on Purim. We drink on Purim for that reason. But it's only to reveal to us what's inside, so that the rest of the year we can do it from the inside out. And this person notices that this person has something that he doesn't have. He doesn't have to be involved in the world, and he's walking around with a smile on his face, a sense of completion, and a sense of accomplishment, and he doesn't get worried so much. So it gets the better of his curiosity, and he comes over and he says, you got to tell me. I'm curious. I don't understand it, but just maybe you can help me understand it better. how is it that you don't do that much, not compared to me? And I'd go on trips and vacations, I eat in fancy restaurants, gourmet food, all these things like that. But you seem to have something that I can't get from all of that. The sense of yeshuva das, the sense of settledness that seems to be part and parcel, you're centered more than I am at this point in time. And I've tried this and I've tried that, even yoga, you name it, and all these other things they offer, right? And just, I said, how? Remember that class we took? What class? The one where the teacher said, let me show you how to become a better person? Okay. Well, I followed the advice. I took it and I used it. And as a result of that, I developed myself. And I found it worked out that my soul and my body were able to line up. And once they were able to do that, it was able to achieve peace of mind. And ever since then, I kept adding to it, How? What did you do? What did you use? I followed Torah. I followed the Torah. It was right there in the Torah. What do you mean, follow Torah? Torah is like this ancient book of laws and commandments and restrictions and guidelines. How could that possibly work for you and accomplish all that? Well, let me show you, right? And he sits down with this person, and this person explains to him the importance of the soul. First, he shows him that he has a soul. He believes he has a soul. Everyone believes they have even people who say they don't believe they have a soul probably deep inside believe they got something in there. But even if they convince themselves that they don't, the average person who doesn't need to have to say that usually believes in some aspect of a soul. And he becomes reintroduced to it. And then he explains to him there's a thing called the body, the goof, and the Yetzer Hara, right? And where it came from. And he gives us all this information. And as he's listening, right, he feels resistance. And he explains to him that resistance you're feeling is not you. Because are you enjoying this? Yes, I am enjoying this. So if you're enjoying it, so then how can you be resisting it? That's a good question. It's almost like it's a dichotomy. It's like I'm not psychotic. It can't be that I have some type of dual personality. So what is that? That's your body. Why? Because your body doesn't understand. Yeah, you were a child once upon a time? Yes, you were a child once upon a time. How many things did your parents try to get you to do or to understand or not to do in your best interest, and you thought that they hated you? You thought that they were out to get you. You thought they were there to interfere with your pleasure in life. But today, you do those things. I mean, famous quote from Mark Twain that has variations just based upon everyday life, where he talks about how he had to go to college for 2.5 years to find out how smart his father really was. In other words, his father didn't go to college. He went to the college of life, right? The school of life, and he learned through experience one thing and he had all this wisdom that Mark Twain said he couldn't believe his father had because he never went to school. He wasn't educated. Only to find out that what his father had learned through life, he was able to see in college. That's the idea. And you talk to so many people who are in their 40s and their 50s and 60s, raising children and going through the exact same thing their parents went through, and hearing, you hear the voices, you hear that it echoes from decades ago inside your head. How different you look at things today versus when you're back than a child. You don't understand, right? A child is like the body, like the Yetzer Hara. It enjoys first and asks questions later. The child doesn't make calculations, doesn't make cheshbonos to figure if I do this today, what's going to cost me tomorrow? That's part of becoming an adult, is to figure those things out, is to think about the larger picture, the bigger picture. I cannot tell you how many things in the world depend upon this, right down to scientists, right down to understanding whether they believe in God, don't believe in God. A person thinks that if a scientist doesn't believe in God, it's because he's proven to himself that God probably doesn't exist. If he doesn't believe in Torah, it must be that Torah is not real, because he's brilliant and he's bright, he's a scientist, so it must be that he's come to these conclusions. But if you actually ask him, he's going to tell you, no, I didn't do any of that stuff. And Dafka not, because science only deals with what it can talk about, what it can measure, what it can replicate in a laboratory, what it can make statements about, not this airy, fairy, mystical stuff you can't put your finger on. It's indescribable. Although that's changing somewhat, because even the physical world is starting to mimic the spiritual world a lot more than it ever used to thanks to modern day quantum mechanics theory and experiments that people are doing. But it's like they just never considered it. That's all. Very bright people in what they know, not so bright in what they don't know. And it's their man-made parameters that blocks them and gives them what they call scientific tunnel vision. Yeah. So a person learns otherwise. A person starts to investigate and think otherwise and more deeply into what life is all about. Right? They start to grow up. They start to mature. They have a larger picture of the situation. Things are constantly grabbing at us to bring us back into the small picture, to make us lose our way, by making us focus on things that are not so ultimately important. But that's where the Torah comes in. That's why you have to have Torah. If a person, is swimming in the sea and they can't make it back to shore, they're not strong enough. They're going to drown, God forbid. Even if they can swim, at some point in time, their arms will not move, their legs will not kick, and even good swimmers have drowned because they overestimated their capability, or there's something against the current, right? You need something to hang on to, that you can float above the water until you can get back your strength or somehow drift towards shore, and that thing is going to save your life. We call it a lifesaver for that very reason. So that's what the Torah is supposed to be. It's not a book. It's been printed as a book, but it's not a book. A book is something you pick up, you read, and put back down again, right? You can leave it in the middle. It's just sitting on the shelf. You take it off. It's not. It's like if you can make a science fiction movie out of it. It's like light comes through the binding, towards the person, and it breaks open. They have some very nice pictures on YouTube, graphics about books are giving off a light. And it's that kind of an idea. The only thing is, though, it's not physical light. So you can't see it with your physical eyes. If you could, everybody would become Torah observant or convert, because it would be clear this is really divine light. But the Torah itself, if a person uses it the way it's meant to be used, they attach themselves to it. And this is why Shlomo HaMelech, he wrote, Eitz Chaim hi l'machazikim ba. Eitz Chaim hi l'machazikim ba. What does it mean? It's a Mishlei. It's a tree of life for those who grasp onto it. What does that mean? It's a tree of life only for those who grasp onto it? Yes. But shouldn't the tree of life be a tree of life for everybody? Whether you grasp on, like in the Garden of Eden, God says to Adam Arishon, that's the Eitz Dust of Ara. That's the one you can't eat from without permission. And this is the Eitz Chaim. It's the tree of life. You could actually point and say, this was the tree of life. The fact that you couldn't see life oozing out of every part of the bark or the branches didn't make a difference. If God says it's a tree of life, it's a tree of life. Take a bite, you live forever. And you could see it. But this type of tree of life now is more of an intellectual, spiritual reality. And Shlomo HaMelech is saying it's not going to appear that way to you. It's only going to appear like an eitz, like wood, like meaningless, like it does to so many people, unless you're machzik it, unless you grab onto it and you're holding onto it. Then all of a sudden it will be mashpia on you, and you'll feel it. And you'll feel the sense of Shekhinah, divine presence, and it will overwhelm you. And that is what the Mishnah is saying is liberation. That is liberating. You're not going to see it by reading the Mishnah. Just to read the Mishnah and not know what it's telling you, to not know that Mishnah is going to seem like a con job. A bunch of rabbis who are trying to convince you about something that's not true because the word happens to be similar. Yeah, right. I'm going to give up my whole life of doing what I like to do the way I like to do it because you found a connection between two words that happen to have the same letters but different vowels. Not me, right? They know that. They knew that when they wrote that. They knew that exactly how people are going to respond to that. They didn't write it for everybody. I mean, they would like to write it for everybody, but they know there are people who, even religious people who already live by Torah, who they don't even look at that Mishnah. That Mishnah is a Mishnah that a person should read probably every single day, certainly before Shavuos, right? And what happens instead is it doesn't register in people's minds what Chazal are actually saying by that. Where is the freedom? Where is the freedom? So there's many different approaches to the answer to this question. They're all the same in the end. We could talk about pardes, right? Pardes, the word pardes, the Hebrew word pardes is the word orchard. A pardes is an orchard, a Hebrew word. But as the Arizal explains in Shar HaGilgulim, pardes actually in this case is not only a word, but it's also a roshi tevos, which means that each of the four letters of pardes, pei, resh, dalet, samach, actually are the first letters of four independent words. And they are pshat, remez, drush, and sod. And we've spoken about this before in the past, but I never know who's here for the first time. It's not here for the first time, so I'm going to go over just again briefly, right? The Arizal talks about, the Gemara, first of all, speaks about pardes, how four great rabbis went into Pardes together, and you don't get much information. You don't even get background information as to why they're doing this. It just sounds like they're going on some kind of like family trip, but they're not. According to the Kabbalah, they're going in to rectify the world because the world is on the verge of tohu. How we know that? How we know the world is about to be destroyed? It's Romans. The Romans have conquered the world basically at that time. Certainly Palestine, all of Asia, and moving into even further east, right? Europe, they have control over, and the world, God is going to destroy the world. The Gemara talks about this, and the Medrash talks about that, but who told the Gemara? How do we know all this? So the Gemara says in Shabbos that is actually Reish Lakish who says it. He says that if you look in the days of creation, when God is making creation the first week, every time it says the first day it says that it was evening, there was night, one day. Then the next day it says then Yom Shlishi, then Yom Rivi'i, then Yom Chamishi, the fifth day, and finally, but the sixth day, which is the creation of man, it says Yom Hashishi. It doesn't say Shishi only; it says Hashishi. So Reish Lakish asked the question, and he's not making up the answer. He's coming from a tradition, a medrash, but he's using this as a vehicle to bring it out. So he asked the question: why is the letter Hey attached to Shishi, but it's not attached to Chamishi or Rivi'i or any of the other days of the week of creating? What's special about the sixth day of creation that it says Hashishi? So right after that, it says Kosh Baruch Hu created and completed the creation of all the world. So that's what we speak. It's part of Kiddush and Shabbos, and God. It's a sikum. It's a summary of all that God did in all the previous verses until this chapter 2 begins over here, and creation's all done. It's a fait complete at this point in time. So why is the hay there? So Reish Lakish explains because God said, okay, now you're all built. Now we've done the whole thing. The job is over. Even man's created, right? So I'm making a condition though. Your existence, creation, is on conditions. Not like I made it and now it's done and I'm going to go away and I'm not going to pay attention anymore. You can do whatever you want with the world, destroy it even. God doesn't say that. That's why by Noach there's a flood, because God's involved. He cares. He has a plan. And if man goes too far away from that plan, then God will, course correct if he has to. And God's saying to creation, if man, and Shishi now is being used not for the sixth day of creation, it's being used for the sixth day of Sivan, 2,448 years later, when the Jewish people have finally left Egypt and gone to Mount Sinai to receive Torah. So God, this is what Reish Lakish is explaining. He's saying that God said to creation, and I don't think he actually stood there and yelled it out to all of creation, but it's like it can move on. It's understood that this is what's going on. So God says to creation, he says, listen, if the Jewish people will accept Torah on the 6th of Sivan in the year 2448, then you have permission to continue on. And if not, then the world will hereby return back to null and void. But we speak about in the second verse of Ma'aseh Bereshis that the land was null and void, there was darkness upon the face of the deep. That's what you're going to go back to. If the Jewish people don't receive and accept Torah, that's what the Hay is doing there. Because the Hay stands for the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the 5 books of the Torah. Bereshis, Shmos, the Ikra, the Midbar, the Varim, right? These are the 5 books. The Jewish people accept the entire Torah in its entirety, then creation has permission to continue. If not, it's going back to null and void. So the rabbis, Rabbi Kiva v'Chevarav, they're looking around at the world, and the world is not really living by Torah that much. It's like a really bad situation. And the rules are, and they're believers. Are you a believer? I'm a believer. They were believers, big time believers. It's not like, you read a theory and maybe yes, maybe no, and you can't really figure out what God's thinking. So maybe God will destroy, God won't destroy, maybe he's not really involved, maybe he went away, and you every single day you go about your life as if maybe it's, but maybe not, but probably not. That's not the way they lived. They knew this was the rule of creation, and it will always be the rule of creation. Yes, God does have a lot of patience, and there's times he will overlook things because we're not, on a level that he can expect certain things from us. We're thousands of years away from Mount Sinai, thousands of years away from prophecy, right? We've been drifting from country to country to country. So it's like the fact that we even have any type of tshuva movement and from people today is remarkable given the history of the Jewish people, because nobody else would ever survive. It's miraculous, absolutely miraculous. And the rules always apply. They always apply, no matter what. So they understood that. So because they understood that, they figured rather than wait to find out if it's true, and although they already saw signs of it, because the base of, I believe the basement was already destroyed. Maybe it wasn't. No, I don't think it was destroyed yet. But the Romans were taking over. It was becoming harder and harder, and people were drifting away and assimilating. Not a lot of Torah being done at that time, and they got nervous. They got very, very scared for all of creation. So Rabbi Akiva assembled a crew, three other rabbis, three great other rabbis, Elish ben Abuya, who was a Tana also, and Ben Azai, mentioned in lots of places, almost the son-in-law of Rabbi Akiva, and Ben Zoma. These are the four with Rabbi Akiva who went into Pardes. That's what the Gemara says. And at this point in time, the only strange things that Rabbi Akiva says, when you get to a certain level, don't say water, water. That's a very complicated idea to explain right now in 5-10 minutes, but Kabbalah explains what that means, what it's talking about. It's all euphemisms and metaphors and Kabbalistic ideas. But still, Rabbi Akiva is like warning them about something that doesn't seem to be normal to us for people going into an orchard. Watch out for the bad fruits, watch out for animals that might be there, watch out for the worms inside the fruit themselves. That's fine, but this type of thing. So it says they went in, and Tosfos explains on the side of the page there. He understands that this is not a normal pardes, a normal orchard, but rather it stands for Pshat Ramazushin Sod, meaning that they were going into the computer program, so to speak, if you will, of Maaseh Bereshis. They were using the four levels of Torah to penetrate the mechanism, the spiritual mechanism responsible for history the way it was. Something's wrong. Something needs to be fixed. It's like a clock that's not keeping time properly. You open it up. The computer's not responding. You press the K key and you get a J key, right? It's not, something's wrong. So you have to open it up, take a look and see the circuitry and figure what's wrong and then fix that. So in the physical world, that's, your screwdrivers and wiring and all kinds of things like that. In the spiritual world, it has to do with ideas, has to do with perceptions, has to do with understanding, right? And Torah provides those tools. And it's a ladder that corresponds also to levels of soul. And Pshat and Remez and Drush and Sod. Let me just give you a quick example about these four levels of Torah. One word, the very first word of the Torah is the word Bereshis, which Bereshis, Balakim, Shemaim, Aretz. In the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. That's what the pasuk says. The simple understanding. That's the way everybody translates it. A little bit nuance here and there, but that's the understanding. In the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. So Rashi, right, who is only interested in Pshat, he says, comes along and says, but wait a second, that can't be Pshat. Why? Grammatically speaking, it's not correct. What do you mean? Well, if you really want to say in the beginning of something, the proper form of the word is not Bereshis. It is Berishonah. And he brings examples from the Mishnah, other places, right? Anytime we want to see the beginning of something, Berishonah, bara Elokim Hashemayim v'ha'aretz. That's what you're supposed to say. What's this Bereshis business? Usually Bereshis is Bereshis ace something else. In the creating of something. The beginning of the creation of something, right? So why is that word being used here? Since the Torah is the word of God, dictated letter by letter, word by word by God to Moshe Rabbeinu, you have to assume that unless it says otherwise, every single word and letter is where it's supposed to be because that's the way God wants it to be. So if God is using, I mean, he made grammar. Grammar comes from him. If he put the word Bereshis there, it can't be just to say in the beginning God made the heavens and the earth. And now we have to figure out why. What's the meaning behind that? So Rashi explains. There's a hint that God used this word to give us a hint to a deeper level of understanding. And the word Bereshis is not really Bereshis, because then it would be Bereshis ace something else. But it's not that, so it cannot be Bereshis. So then what is it? Then Hebrew, you can do this. So now it becomes two words. Base, right? The first base is sub. You split it up, the base and the Reshis, because you can do that in Hebrew. In English, you don't. You don't put the I don't know the grammatical terms for these different things, antecedents, but in Hebrew you can do that. You take the base, which means for something, and put it at the beginning of the word, because since one letter says it, it's not a word. So to make it a word, you attach it to the other word, but it means two words. Bereshis. Reshis means the first, the beginning of something. And then Rashi explains what Reshis refers to. And we see different examples of it. And one is that the Jewish people are called Reshis because they're the ones who accepted Torah. So like they're the first nation, so to speak, that leads the world. They're heads, leaders. And then you have things like Trumas and Meiser, Reshis, things, first crops that are grown. So Rashi explains, so therefore the word Bereshis means for the sake of Reshis, God made the heavens and the earth for the sake of the Jewish people. And he shows that Torah is called Reshis. So the word Bereshis is letting you in on a fundamental of existence to save you from causing the world to be blown up and destroyed, and of a flood, things like that. If Noah's generation had only paid attention, they didn't have the Torah yet, so they couldn't. But if they had the Torah, they paid attention to the word Bereshis and what it means, they would have done tshuva like Noah. They would have done tshuva and lived like Noah did. But they didn't have it. And Noah didn't teach it, even though Noah learned Torah, but I don't know if he had that. But we do, and it tells us that for the sake of Torah and the sake of the Jewish people who learned Torah, God made the whole world. And exactly what Reish Lakish says. So, don't pat yourself in the back, because it's not, we didn't do anything. I mean, we were just gifted this opportunity, but it's a huge responsibility, and lots of people have run away from it because they don't want it. So they try and fake it. They try to find another way to do it by taking away all the misses. But it's a huge responsibility. Do you want to be responsible for whether the world survives or not? No, I don't think so. Right? But that's what it means. For the sake of Torah, the sake of the Jewish people who live by Torah, God made the heavens and the earth. And if they're not going to do it, says Reish Lakish, says the Gemara, says the Pasuk, God's going to destroy creation. And that's all from one word, Bereshis, a remes, a hint. You can see it with your eyes, even though it's not clear in the beginning what it means. That's the Reish of Pardes. So what's the drush? Drush from the word lidrosh, which means to investigate, to check something out. The word medrash is a product of that. The Gemara is a level of drush, where they often look at words and connect up ideas to understand one concept from another concept. It's constantly using, there are 13 principles, the dreshus behen that we use to make connections in words and ideas and to teach us something that, or at least find a source for something that we already know. But the idea of drush in this particular case, what does it mean? So the Medrash says that really you can also divide the word Bereshis into two words in a different way. You could actually do that, bara, the first part of Bereshis is the word bara, he created, and the last three letters are shin yud tes, which means shis, which means six in Aramaic. Okay, the Aramaic may sound a little difficult at first, but it's not the first time that Aramaic words are in the Torah. And there's a special, Gemara talks about a special, just like Yiddish, for example, has a special place in Jewish history. It's not just another language we picked up. There's something about it. There's Mama Lashon, they call it Mama Lashon. There's something about Yiddish that's so good for, so geschmack for learning, so good for communicating. When you listen to people speak Yiddish, you want to. I wish I had paid attention to that one too. Just like I didn't pay attention to the Hebrew, right? I didn't pay attention to the Yiddish Mayas because when will I ever need that? But it's got something there. There's some soul to the language, and also Aramaic too. It's the language of the Gemara. It's the language of Onkelos. It's the language that they spoke in Bavel. all the time. So it's got something special to it. So the fact that it's Shis is not a problem, but that's what the Medrash says. Bara Shis. What's 6? What are we talking about? Well, we know there's 6 days of creation. So the Medrash is telling you that when God said the word Bereshis, he actually spoke into existence all 6 days of creation, at least the potential for them. It wasn't that on day 1, he made this potential, and then day 2, he made that potential, and then keep going the rest of the week, and then the millennia after that. No, all the potential for all of history, the 6 days and the 6,000 years, all encoded in the first word Bereshis, which now explains why that the Tikkun Zohar, which is a section of the Zohar, has 70 different explanations of the word Bereshis that go all over the place in 3 volumes, I believe. A lot of Kabbalah on the word Bereshis. Very, very deep word, obviously. That's the Medrash. What about the Sod? Well, Sod we know is Kabbalah. So secret, mystery, it's Kabbalah, right? That's the Samacha Pardes. What else could you say? We just spoke about that division there, the 6 days of creation. What about the Sod? So there you have what is brought down in Kabbalah, that the 6 doesn't just refer to the 6 days, but even the 6 days are the product of something else. It's like the Big Bang, right, is not the beginning. Something had to exist to create the Big Bang. And whatever that was, if it wasn't nothing and something, then there had to be something to create the something that created the Big Bang, et cetera, the whole way, right? But the same thing is true. The 6 days of creation didn't come from nowhere. Where they come from? So that's where Kabbalah comes in. At that moment, Bereshis, at that stage of the rectification process of creation, God fixed up and put in place the 6 spheres of Chesed, Gevur, Tiferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, and they are spiritual realities, completely spiritual realities. Don't go looking for them anywhere in the physical world. They're not there. And yet they're the basis of all 6,000 years. They're the basis of all 6 days of creation. And now they're the basis of the 6,000 years. Our millennium corresponds to the 6th day of creation, which corresponds to the 6th sphere called Yesod. And it's tied to redemption and specific times And if you look into, right now we're counting the Omer. Spheres of Omer, same word, right? But the word spore is to count. So spheres of Omer, pretty much all this Sidurim have it. But if you look, you'll notice that under each of the days, you'll find a 2 words side by side. The first one is Chesed Shebechesed, and Gevur Shebechesed, and each one is a different trait that you're supposed to work on, Kabbalistic trait you're supposed to work on that day. And those are the 7 spheres of Chesed through Malchus. There's 3 more above that, Keser, Chachma, Bina. But the 6 specifically, the Malchus is kind of the world we live in, but it's actually the art itself. But the 6 spheres that God made at that moment, they are the basis of the 6 millennia. So the sphere of Chesed was the basis of the first millennium, and Gevur the second, and it's what colors them. It gives the personality. Just like your soul, right? The type of soul you have, you can't change that. You cannot change your soul. That's what you're given. That's what you got. You will have a certain nature no matter what. You can adapt, right? Someone who's Gevura, which means their soul is very judgment oriented, can learn the importance of being not judgmental and train themselves to be less judgmental, but the basis is going to be judgment, or the other way around. If they're chesed, they'll have a tough time, judging, because that's not their nature. You can adapt, but that's basically what's running your life, is your soul, the nature of your soul. So obviously, if you understand your soul, the nature of it, then you can understand, where your power lies. And then you can direct that and channel it in God-given directions to help you become closer to God, as opposed to the wrong direction. People become evil. They do evil things because they take that power of their soul and use it for corrupt reasons, in a corrupt way. It happens to all of us in some level, right? But a person, for example, if a person uses their neshama, their soul, to do something, to accomplish a holy thing, a productive thing, that's taking the exact same energy. The same energy that's used for good can be used for bad. That's used for bad can be used for good, if the person has the seichel to know. And that's what that student didn't understand at first, but he learned after from the other students. And then once he realized that's the system that which his life is running by, he was able to recognize what part of him is the soul and what part of him is the body. And once he was able to realize that, he was able to discipline his body, able to realize what's productive and what's not productive. Yeah, I feel like having that food right now, but it's Yom Kippur. So I'm gonna deny myself the food because there's a higher purpose of it. I'll feel better about myself by not eating, even though my stomach is growling, because my soul's in charge now. And that's what Pardes has done for us. That's what Pardes does for a person. The more you enter, the deeper. That's just one word. The whole Torah is understood on this level, and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper than you can ever possibly, and infinitely deeper, because it is the Word of God. So maybe a book on the shelf. It's one thing to learn Torah. It's another thing to learn Torah, right? Learning Torah in the first level is basically you just read the words, take in the ideas. Maybe you can give them over. You can write a book about them if you want to. Right? You can use them. It's right there. The Christians made a whole religion based upon what they saw in the Old Testament. And then they call it the New Testament. It didn't affect them the way it's supposed to affect them. Or the Muslims, for sure not, and the rest of the world as well, right? But to learn it, where it goes inside of you. And that's really what Shavuos is all about. Because Shavuos, interesting enough, does not celebrate the Torah that we have right now. The Torah that we have right now is the second set of tablets that Moshe came down the mountain with. We celebrate that after Yom Kippur, right? He came down after the forgiveness with the second set of tablets, a lower level of Torah that you see has different levels in which it can be learned, to the point that a person can even make fun of Torah. That's how reduced its light is, how filtered its light is, that people could actually learn it and not be positive affected. But the first set of tablets, that was impossible. It was Messianic Torah. If you learned that Torah, it changed you on the spot. So what's with Shavuos? Okay, so we're commemorating that we got it and lost it, because the golden calf, and what? No. It's a door opening up, like all the holidays. It's a door opening up. We have a chance to experience. We can't get it so much through the Sefer Torah we have right now because it's parchment and ink and all that. We can't get it so much to a Gemara because, again, it's words on the page, and they get old, and right. But you can. That's what Shavuos says to you. You can. That light remains in the world. The luchos don't. But after they were broken, they were put inside the Arna Kodesh. They weren't buried. They weren't taken back to heaven. Moshe didn't say to the guy here, the base of Mikdash was destroyed. The Kohanim took the keys and they threw them up in the Shemayim, and the big hand supposedly came down and took them, right? And said, we're not worthy of having the base of Mikdash. We're giving it back to you, God. But Moshe didn't do that. He brought the luchos down. He made sure everybody saw them before they broke. And the Pri Tzaddik says that even though normally, if a Sefer Torah is about to fall to the ground, we all dive to protect it, Moshe deliberately brought the luchos down, even though he knew he was going to have to break them, because everybody had to see it. And the Pri Tzaddik says that because we saw it, even though we ourselves weren't there necessarily, the souls might have been, but it went into the soul of the Jewish people, the luchos rishonos. Just like they're hidden inside the Arna Kodesh in pieces, likewise, that level of Torah exists inside of us too. And we can use the Torah that we have right now to access that. As the Baal Term explains, that the luchos shnius, the second set of tablets, are just stepping stones to the first set of tablets. That's the difference. In the first time, you didn't need a stepping stone. They were right there to be learned. Now we have to go through channels, through different means. So we have to have stepping stones. That's the Torah we have today. But unless you do pardes, unless you don't just take it for granted, face value, it's not going to happen. But if you make that effort, understand what's waiting for you on the other side of the rainbow, it's a whole different level of reality. Anyhow, good Shabbos and Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, Rabbi. That was really amazing. I just had one comment to make, and the comment is that you were saying you can make a movie out of this book. And I think that this has been an inspiration for movies for years and years. And we see lots of themes and things like Star Wars and all these other things where it could only, even the Harry Potter books, I've often thought.
All that stuff, that the fact that people have good versus evil and spiritual forces. They don't want to talk about God. So they talk about spiritual forces in nature and creation, all that. But everybody seems to acknowledge that something metaphysical has to happen to turn people into heroes. And all the heroes, almost without fail, are all people who are humble, who have who try to be good people, who have a sense of values and morality. It's like amazing in this day and age that still sells billions of tickets.
Right. And I was going to ask you one quick question, unless it's not a quick question. But when you're learning Torah, like not everybody's going to learn Torah full time. Some of us are watching, and some of us are watching, including me as a woman. I go to Shirim. That counts as learning Torah. I don't have to sit with the Gemara.
I didn't mention full time once.
I just wanted to make it clarify for anybody who's listening, because people envision. I envision guys sitting in front or guys in the base midrash, and I feel like, hope we're all on the bandwagon with this, even if we don't do that.
It's not a matter. It's rarely a matter of quantity. Quantity is important.
It's worth a mention. That's all.
Quantity is important. There's no question about that, because the more that you learn, the more you have as your database, like that. But the main point, you can take one idea, just one idea, like we took one word, and you can run it through Pardes, and you can end up with more insights and people who have read and written books on a similar topic. The Arizal actually, according to the tradition, he received his Masorah, his tradition, a large part by meditating on words of the Chumash. A lot about the Zohar. He meditated. He would take these things and he would sit there. He would meditate for hours on words and send psukim, and all this would come to him. And it's clearly worked, because he was a special person without question. His soul was special, but nevertheless, it just shows you the power. I think everyone's experienced it to some degree, but we don't give ourselves a chance to do it, because we move on too quickly. We take things very superficially. There are times I've learned the parsha now for decades. Every week you learn the parsha that week, and you're supposed to do the pasuk twice and Rashi once, and hopefully Unclus as well. So I make it up in one aliyah a day. And so, there are Rashis I've been seeing now for 45, 50 years. I don't know, a long time. And yet, just this year, I saw something in Rashi that struck me as an interesting idea that I never noticed before. Never before. And why? Why now? Because the time of day, how settled my mind was, undistracted, juxtaposed with what else I was doing. It could be a number of things coming together, but all of a sudden, and it wasn't because I saw more things than I did. No, it was the same Rashi. I saw something was different this time. And because of it, the idea jumped out at me. I said, wow, that's an amazing concept, right? So you just see, like, that's what I'm promoting here right now, is to take whatever you have, even if you didn't add anything more to your knowledge right now, but just took what you know now, and you meditate on that, and you think about it, you ask questions on it, like the Haggadah says to do. You will come up with phenomenal amounts of information, Torah, that will blow your mind.
That's beautiful advice. Thank you, Rabbi. I'm going to give that to him. I'm going to speak to a group of teenagers this Shavuos, and I think that's something they might want to, they might be able to hear.
Just as I'm just working right now on a Haggadah for their helping guys over the next year, and the question, is like, what are we doing here? These are the same 4 questions and the same answer every single year. Okay, if a child's there for the first time, good. For him, it's new. But everybody else, we know the question, we know the answer, right? So what are we doing? Why do we have to repeat the questions? The rest of the Haggadah, fine. It's acts we're doing, to celebrate and to commemorate and all that. But why the same 4 questions and the same answer? What? The answer is because they're not the same 4 questions, and it's not the same answer. You know why? Because you're different. The year's different. The time's different. The world's different. The words didn't change, but the world around them did. And for that reason, they are now different questions every single year, and the answer is different every single year. And your job is to figure out why.
Deep and amazing, but relevant, very relevant. Thank you so much, Rabbi, and again, and everybody, thank you for joining us. You'll watch the replay. Encourage your friends to watch the replay. We try to come on every week. Rabbi Winston sponsors himself, basically, so you should know he gives us out of the kindness of his heart. And we really appreciate that so much. And please Hashem should give us a happy, healthy Shabbat and Shabbos and Shavuot, Shavuos, whoever wants to hear either
And
one.
like,
Bring the end of this war, please, and bring our hostages home. We'll take this little pin that reminded me every day. Thanks everybody for joining us. Take care.